Rome, the first metropolis. A city built on 2,700 years of history, entertainment, and of course, food.
It's the most glorious thing I've ever seen.
You know, there's two types of people. People that are Italian and people that want to be Italian.
Here, the most fascinating stories are hiding in plain sight. How does a pork product bursting with fat and flavor
Oh, these smell amazing.
Delicious.
hold the secret to the growth of an empire?
We still use its ideas that were put in place 2,000 years ago.
How did a Vatican taste test turn Rome into a coffee mecca?
When you get that much and you drink it, you think, ah, yes, that's fantastic.
How did American GIs create a spaghetti legend? This is Rome, and you'll never look at it the same way again. (1 AD). Over 1 million people live in Rome, the largest city on Earth.
This was the first metropolis in the world. All the different components that you expect in a modern city, they already had 2,000 years ago.
Today, amidst the trappings of the Eternal City, over 500 ancient Roman structures still stand.
Rain fell on these buildings 2,000 years ago, and yet they're still standing. That's why I love calling it the Eternal City, because it's still there.
But Rome wasn't built in a day. In fact, it's been in a constant state of construction, deconstruction, and reconstruction for over 2,700 years.
I think Rome is the ultimate open-air museum.
When you're in Rome, you feel the history everywhere. It's not 200 years old, it's 2,000 years old.
Through the heart of Rome flows the river Tiber. On these riverbanks, in 1000 BC, a tribe called the Latins built a settlement. They were successful farmers and traders, and so from its early days, Rome was a rich city. In 509 BC, the city became a republic, and the ancient Romans began an epic building project. Instead of stone, they used a radical new building material, concrete.
Concrete is the most underappreciated material in the history of humanity. And the Romans pretty much invented it, or at least invented the modern use of it.
Unlike earlier mortars, the Romans added volcanic ash to their mix, creating a bond so strong it rivals the concrete of today. It allowed them to construct elaborate arches and domes.
The Romans took elements that already existed throughout the world. They made it their own, and they scaled it up. Architecture and engineering, what the Romans did with it was put it on another scale that before their time was unthinkable. And that's what allowed them to build such a great city, a massive city, the first metropolis.
One of the Romans' most remarkable achievements is the Pantheon. Built as a temple to all Roman gods, it was completed in 120 AD. It's the oldest building in continuous operation on Earth. Still standing, still open. The dome is 5,000 tons of unsupported concrete, the largest of its kind, and a unique marvel of engineering even today. 2,000 years ago, Rome was full of palaces, villas, and 6-story apartment buildings. Yet the heart of this vast metropolis is not inside any of its epic structures. It's outside, in open spaces like the Forum. Surrounded by government buildings, the Forum was the center of city life.
This is the real epicenter of the city, and it was a place of commerce and political organization, an opportunity for people to come and gather. And these open spaces existed in other parts of the world. But what the Romans did with the Roman Forum became definitive.
Today, the Roman Forum is a 2-acre window on the life of the ancient city. and people can still walk right through it.
There's a certain amount of restraint and respect that you have to show because it's not behind glass. It surrounds you. It's everywhere.
2,000 years later, modern Romans still live the same way. Outside, al fresco, in the open public spaces of their city. They're everywhere in Rome, and they're called piazzas. Some are enormous, like St. Peter's. Others are smaller, more intimate and quiet. In all, there are more than 200 piazzas in Rome, more than any other city.
You can sit and admire often very beautiful buildings around them. And I mean, people watching is one of my favorite things. So you can do that well in a piazza, and you may have a nice fountain in the middle too, where you can flick a coin and make a wish.
And if that wish comes true, you can thank one notorious emperor and an infamous fire.
In 64 AD, from this vantage point, you would have seen the entire horizon, everything aflame.
July 18, 64 AD. Fire raged throughout the city. Rumor had it that Emperor Nero wanted to make space for renovations. For 6 days, Rome burned.
It was so devastating that 3/4 of the city was annihilated, burnt to the ground.
Whether Nero burned Rome is contested, but he was a driving force behind the city's reconstruction.
It was an opportunity to rebuild from the bottom up. And what they did was build a Rome grander and more impressive. And it's that legacy that you still see today as you go through Rome.
So what we think of as ancient Rome is really Rome 2.0.
And in the heart of Rome 2.0, they built a colossal structure, today a symbol of the power and depravity of ancient Rome. The Colosseum.
The Colosseum is so raw and so epic.
Completed in 80 AD, the Colosseum was built to hold over 50,000 spectators. It would become the model for every sports stadium in the world today.
We still use its ideas that were put in place 2,000 years ago, the recurring arches. That is so everyone in the Colosseum, 80,000 people, could enter and then exit within 10 minutes.
It's an amazing feat of architecture and infrastructure, beautifully engineered for its purpose.
And the purpose? Entertainment. Free for all, no matter what the cost to the entertainers. The main attraction is the gladiators, Rome's heroes of the arena, trained in the fighting arts, with a flair for theater. And the people eat it up.
The people in the stands, you know, they brought picnics with them, and they were sleeping, and they were eating, and they were drinking, and they lived in the Colosseum that day. And all they wanted to do was be entertained.
Think of it as professional wrestling, with an edge.
To become a famous gladiator, it was no easy task. You had to have the right attributes. You had to have the physique. You had to have the looks. The looks were very important, remember. And of course, you had to sort of build your career, just as a boxer would. Once you got to that top stage where you actually did get to fight in the Colosseum, you were just too powerful, too wealthy, too loved. There was too much riding on them to be able to just have them risk their lives.
To cheat death time and time again, the gladiators, well, cheated.
This is very different from a soldier's gladius. Soldier's gladius was very thin and very sharp. It had to be, but the problem with that is you can't actually strike a sword off another sword. It will split eventually. Whereas this sword, nice and thick, it takes a good pounding and it has some very good sound effects to it.
But the crowds didn't just want sound. They wanted blood.
What we have here, quite simply, is the tricks of the trade. We've got a little piece of cling film, a hole, some fake blood, place it in there. Now, obviously, the Romans didn't have cling film or fake blood you could buy at a shop, but sausage skin, fill it with pig's blood, sheep's blood, very easy. And you've got yourself a nice homemade blood pack. And then placed in a very strategic spot, either the inside of the belt, or perhaps under a gauntlet here, and at the right moment, a good thrust. And as you thrust, he squishes it there, the blood pouring down. And as he extracts, you've got your gladiatorial wound. Now, if we can trick a camera, we could obviously trick people sat in the Colosseum.
The gladiators' sleight of hand tricks were a small part of a larger deception. A conspiracy hatched by the ruling class to keep from losing their own heads. A policy called bread and circuses. The circus was free entertainment at the Colosseum. The bread, free grain for every citizen. And the recipe they followed is still in use today at Roscioli's bakery. Hulled wheat, sourdough, and brown salt. Food writer and journalist Erica Firpo lives right next door to Roscioli's.
This is fundamental to Roman life. You know, in the mornings you head to your forno, your bakery, to get the bread that you need for the day.
Roscioli's bakes 73 kinds of bread, some more modern than others. But its most popular product goes back almost as far as bread itself, pizza bianca. But Rome's traditional pizza doesn't come with sauce or cheese, just dough drizzled with olive oil and salt, and Romans buy it by the kilogram.
This is the ultimate comfort food. You have a little kid, a little antsy child like I do, give them a little pizza bianca. Having a breakup? Pizza bianca. You know, celebrating the end of the day? A little pizza bianca, especially when it's fresh out of the oven.
But pizza bianca is just a small slice of Roman cuisine, and an even smaller piece of Rome's story.
Ciao, grazie. Buona giornata.
Rome's Campo de' Fiori, home to the city's best-known food market. For the chefs of Rome, this is where every day begins. The produce comes out of the Roman Campagna, the countryside around Rome, one of the most fertile farming areas in the world.
Rome was the melting pot for all of Italy. So you found goods, vegetables, breads, styles of food from all over the country made its way to their largest city.
Shopping here is great. It's so different than growing up in the United States. You don't just go to one place where you can pick up everything. You go to various places. You're going from stall to stall, picking up the salami, picking up the fruit and vegetables. Have a little conversation. This is where life takes place.
It's also here that Romans source their tomatoes, the lifeblood of Italian cooking.
Buongiorno. For Italian people, life doesn't exist without tomato.
Being Italian, you grow up, if you cut me, I don't bleed. Tomatoes come out.
I don't think there are many dishes that I can think of that aren't affected by the tomato.
Italian cooking without the tomato is unthinkable, right? Well, that's how it was before they arrived from Peru in the 1500s.
Tomato is one of the most important ingredients in our cooking.
Today, Italians grow 320 different varieties of tomato, and there's a recipe for every single one.
The name of this tomato is cuore di bue. These tomatoes are for salad. These are datterini. Datterini we use to prepare a fresh sauce.
Italian cooks rarely put a tablespoon of sugar in their 3 quarts of tomato sauce the way so many American cooks do. They put very finely grated carrots, so they get a very nutty vegetal sweetness.
Grazie. Thank you.
Eating simple seasonal food and drinking good wine is at the heart of living la dolce vita, which literally means the sweet life. And life only grows sweeter by night. The piazzas fill with crowds, and the stage is set for the next Roman ritual, the Aperitivo. At 5 p.m., every bar in every piazza is packed.
As a Roman, to be out for the Aperitivo means the day is over, you can finally relax with your friends, chat, and enjoy the beautiful squares.
Piazza life is a theater. The whole city is a stage.
Aperitivo is the drink before dinner, when everyone comes out to see and be seen. In the Piazza di Pietra, Salotto 42 is a small aperitivo bar with a big view of the 2nd century Temple of Hadrian.
I don't know if you have noticed how tiny is the bar, because the outside is so amazing that you don't need to be inside.
Rome is about wine. Rome is about eating late, like the earliest dinner reservation you can get is 8 p.m., which to me is just very, very late for dinner. And so, for me, Rome is all about eating, all about drinking, all about staying up late.
Because dinner's always late, the aperitivo is accompanied by another Roman tradition, antipasto, before meal in Italian.
You're just having a drink and you have all these amazing mortadella and prosciutto, different kinds of cheeses. I mean, it's kind of what in the US we would think of as like a fancy dinner, but here it's just normal when you go out for a drink with friends.
In America, you get big bowl, you get big plates, you get too much food. In Italy, you get just the right amount of food, but you get different types and different varieties.
The aperitivo ritual is relatively new, around 250 years old. But the food that comes with it, the antipasto, is almost as old as the city itself. And this is where you can get the genuine article.
This is one of the most fantastic specialist delicatessens in all of Rome. It's been in the same family for 4 generations.
The ancient Romans mastered curing meat and cheese with salt and smoke. They had to. In an age before refrigeration, their lives and empire depended on it.
This is the living legacy of all of that wonderful preserved food that the Romans gave us 2,000 years ago.
When in Rome, do as the ancient Romans did. Ruggeri's sells more than 55 different antipasto items, most of them made the old way. But there is one type of antipasto that Romans prize above all others. Pecorino di Romano, a hard cheese made from sheep's milk and salt.
There are chunks of salt actually in the cheese. Look at this stuff. It's amazing.
That for, 70, 80 years, the largest, the most popular Italian cheese that came into this country was, Pecorino Romano, right? And that's what was put all over pasta. It wasn't Parmesan.
Mamma mia, incredibile.
Every year, Italy produces 25,000 tons of this one cheese, and exports are worth over $150 million. 2,000 years ago, it was essential to world domination. High in energy, compact in size, it was the fuel that allowed Roman soldiers to march vast distances and still be able to fight. It also lasted forever, thanks to its high content of salt, a mineral that was a vital part of the Roman Empire.
Salt would have been necessary in order to preserve meat. So this would have been a huge, valuable commodity. In fact, soldiers were paid in salt. And if they weren't up to snuff on the battlefield, well, they weren't worth their salt.
Controlling this precious mineral and supplying it to the furthest reaches of the empire was only possible thanks to one of the Romans' greatest engineering achievements: roads. By 115 AD, all roads led to Rome. All 250,000 miles of them. Enough to circle the world 10 times. Much of this ancient road network still exists.
This road that we're driving on right now is one of the most important in the whole network of the Roman roads. This road is called the Via Salaria, which means the Salt Road, named because of the purpose that it served, and that was the distribution of salt throughout the Roman Empire. And that was an absolutely pivotal thing that had to be done. Without salt, the empire would crumble. The road network was critical.
Built 300 years before the birth of Christ, the Via Appia that connects Rome to southern Italy remains completely intact and runs straight into the heart of the city. But today, just try driving where all roads lead, in the center of Rome. After thousands of years of street building, it's a sprawling maze with more twists and turns than a plate of spaghetti. Now add 2 million cars and 500,000 scooters speeding around. And driving in Rome is kind of like the gladiator games. You have to watch out.
Rome's traffic is absolutely chaotic.
Traffic in Rome is a bitch.
I mean, it's just chaos.
Every single person thinks they're Mario Andretti.
Rome is famously impassable.
If you were a driver in Italy, pedestrians are nothing but an impediment to your next destination.
This is the Piazza Venezia. 5 roads converge here. But because they don't want to ruin the view, there's not one road sign or traffic light. Rush hour is chaos, until Rome's traffic control system comes to work. His name is Walter.
I direct traffic with my white gloves and my whistle. I must be very brave to do this work.
So Walter can direct the traffic safely. The city have come up with a distinctly Roman twist. Like the old Roman gods, Walter brings order to chaos with a wave of his arm and a blast on his whistle. After a day of dodging drivers with a death wish, Walter heads to a local cafe to enjoy one of Rome's most succulent creations, porchetta, a roast pork dish that dates back to the days of ancient Rome and a reminder of the decadence that led to the empire's fall. An army runs on its stomach, and no army ate more or better than the Roman legions. But one dish in particular always bolstered the troops' morale. A dish so delicious that today Romans eat it by the ton. It's called porchetta, pork slow roasted to fork-tender perfection.
The Porchetta Sandwich is kind of like a bagel to a New Yorker.
No, I could not imagine Rome without porchetta. It's a tradition, I think.
And this is where all Rome's porchetta comes from today, the suburbs of Aperitivo on the northern edge of the city. Leopardi's roasts up to 400 porchetta a day, and they're just one of 17 places doing the same thing.
Ciao, Fabio.
Ciao.
True porchetta can only be made in Aperitivo, and it has to be done like the old Romans did it. First, you debone your pig.
It takes 30 seconds to debone this section of the pig, and it becomes an art form.
Then add salt by the handful.
You're putting about ½ a pound of salt on the porchetta. It'll keep it really nice and juicy so that when we bite into it, we're gonna wanna bite more.
Now some black pepper.
Then they take the herbs, which are rosemary and lightly dried garlic.
Finally, the whole thing is rolled up and stitched together.
It's amazing to watch him. I like to call him the tailor of porchetta.
5 hours in the oven, and you've got a porchetta fit for a Roman legion.
Oh my God. Oh, these smell amazing. I think I've died and gone to porchetta heaven. It's been just cooking all the juices, the spices, the salt to create the perfect porchetta.
Every year, Romans devour 550 tons of roasted pork. And some of it ends up at La Frascetta.
This place is literally around the corner from my house. It's the quintessential porchetta place. It's cheap, it's basic, it's the colors of Roma, the soccer team, which are orange and red. and it's just got the best porchetta.
They start with sliced bread, then add cheese from Venice, slices of porchetta, local greens, and cherry tomatoes. Simple.
This is a really good sandwich. I'm happy. I wouldn't get this anywhere else in the world because I know it's not going to be as good as they have it here, only for Rome.
This decadent sandwich, loaded with fat and salt, is like a metaphor for the Roman Empire at its height. It's rich. Back then, salt was essential for Rome's prosperity, but the city needed something else to survive: water. This presented a problem. There was nothing fresh about the Tiber, where Roman sewage flowed. For the city to survive, they needed fresh water, and lots of it. So Rome begins work on the most sophisticated network of aqueducts the world has ever seen. And this is where 6 of these aqueducts met, at Porta Maggiore, where today 8 roads and 3 tram lines converge at the city's ancient southern gate.
So at the top of this wall, you can see 2 large holes. Each one represents a separate aqueduct channel coming from a separate source. And over here, you can see 3 other aqueducts. Each one is added as the population increases.
The Roman aqueducts are a cliche when people talk about great engineering, but it's totally true. The vision of these Roman engineers, their ability to build these aqueducts with no modern tools at all, was really so impressive. This was infrastructure on a grand scale. And Rome wouldn't have been possible without it. They brought water in from well over 100 miles away in many cases.
Over the course of 5 centuries, Rome built 11 massive aqueducts, totaling some 500 miles in length. At the time, the biggest, most ambitious building project in history.
The revenue to pay for all this stuff comes not just from the citizens of Rome, it's coming from all over the empire.
The only way in which you're able to build those aqueducts, those roads, those buildings, the Colosseum, is if you are exploiting massive numbers of people throughout the known world.
Ultimately, these excesses led to Rome's demise. By the 4th century, rebellion rages throughout Roman territory. An empire that once spanned 3 continents is now teetering on the brink of collapse. In the Eternal City, time is running out. As a last line of defense, the city repurposes its aqueducts. The arches are bricked up, the great marble gates encased in concrete to form part of the vast Aurelian walls that surround the city.
From atop these towers, you can see the extent of the Aurelianic walls. It's got a massive circuit protecting everyone in the city. It extended for 12 miles, but by the 5th century, this massive construction is going to be rendered utterly useless. In AD 410, you have outside these walls a massive, angry Visigoth army. So they're outside, the Romans are inside, and they're manning these walls until, through treachery, on the 24th of August, AD 410, one of these gates is opened up, and that massive horde comes through. They sack the city, and it is the beginning of the end of the Roman Empire.
Rome's temples crumble. Sheep graze in the ruins. The city shrinks in size. The population plummets from over 1.5 million at Rome's height to just 30,000 by 500 AD.
When London and Paris were thriving, Rome was a backwater. You know, things had moved on.
For almost 1,000 years, Rome is not much more than a village. But Rome's fortunes will turn, thanks largely to the wealth of the Roman Catholic Church. In the 1400s, Pope Martin V and his successors commissioned extravagant Renaissance buildings and public art. Rome once again becomes a great metropolis. One of the most extravagant additions to the city are fountains.
The fountains in Rome are very romantic. They're very grand, and I love that they're there. And then, I love that we can go visit them.
Today, Rome has over 2,000 fountains, more than any other city in the world. And this is one of Rome's most elaborate. It's the Fountain for the Four Rivers. Built in 1651 as a symbol of the church's global power, it still dominates the Piazza Navona.
It's like no other fountain I've ever seen in my life. There's always something different, and to be interpreted differently.
We have four figures on the fountain. They represent the four rivers of the world, and therefore Rome's dominance over the whole world.
Looking for spring water? Skip paying for it bottled and sip from the spring-fed fountains.
You can fill up your water bottles, you can drink right from under the spout. It's lovely.
Every August, in the heat of the summer, the Pope made sure the fountain overflowed on purpose, and Piazza Navona became a small lake. For about 2 centuries, it provided summer relief to all Romans, rich and poor alike. The fountain was designed by Lorenzo Bernini, one of the artistic stars of Rome's Renaissance.
The Bernini is everywhere. It's not just the fountains, it's the Bernini marble sculptures all over Rome. And actually, I have a tattoo on my back, which is a statue that's in a church by Bernini. It's called the Ecstasy of St. Teresa. So that's on my back. I love Rome so much that I had to commemorate it on myself.
But the Catholic Church's greatest contribution to Rome wasn't the fountains. It was the Vatican.
From one of the hills, looking down on it, it's like staring at a group of Fabergé eggs. It's the most glorious thing I've ever seen.
It's probably the only moment in my life that I felt paralyzed. I felt, when I walked in that square, I felt I couldn't move.
The Vatican is the official residence of the Pope and is the smallest country in the world. Just 842 people live within its 110 acres, 1/8 the size of New York's Central Park.
It's something that you don't quite believe until you show up and you see the Swiss Guard, which looks like nothing else in Rome, and you're like, what is that? And then, oh, that's right, that's right.
It does feel like its own country. It really does. It really feels like there's someone in charge of this little piece of land that is separate from the rest of the world.
5 million people visit the Vatican every year, generating over $100 million for the church, and a constant stream of tourists for the city of Rome. But beyond another source of tourist revenue and flowing fountains, the Pope gave Rome something richer still, something that would uplift Italian spirits forever: coffee.
Romans like to have a coffee fast and strong. We drink and go. Without coffee, Italy will grind to a halt.
Rome runs on coffee. Hundreds of cafes dot the city. And the dark, rich espresso they serve is a fixture of modern Roman life. But were it not for one holy man, this rich tradition would not exist. In the 1500s, when coffee first came to Europe from the Middle East, it was known as Satan's drink, linked to Muslim enemies the church had battled for centuries. Drinking Satan's drink became such a controversy, Pope Clement VIII had to intervene. His infallible palate would decide coffee's fate once and for all. According to legend, he declared, "This devil's drink is delicious. We should cheat the devil by baptizing it." With his blessing, coffee quickly spread throughout Europe and eventually the world. But Italy's greatest contribution to coffee culture is this: the espresso machine. Barista Federico Chiesa works his like a fine instrument.
We prepare about 1,000 coffees every single day. It doesn't matter what day. We just have to place the coffee grounds into a filter, press it very hard as we can.
Push the button and the water is instantly flashed to steam and forced through nearly an inch of compressed coffee with 9 atmospheres of pressure, all in under 30 seconds.
You know, you say, can I have a cup of coffee? And you get that much, and you drink it, and you think, ah, yes, that's fantastic.
I remember the first time I went to Rome, I was like, can I have a coffee to go? And I knew how to say that in Italian, and they still had no idea what I was talking. What do you mean you want it to go? No, you stand at the bar, and you order your espresso, and the barista brings it over, and you sit there drinking your espresso, and you just think, there's no better place to be than at this bar right now drinking this espresso.
For 1,100 years, the popes ruled Rome. It wasn't until 1871 that their power ended, when the city was made the capital of the newly unified country of Italy.
It is incredible to think that this city that has been around for 2,000 years has actually only been the capital of this country for 150.
Ela Vittoriano is a monument dedicated to the first king of unified Italy. Completed in 1935, it's built not from concrete, but marble, and is the world's largest marble structure. It dominates the Piazza Venezia, the square where dictator Mussolini delivered speeches in the 1930s, posturing before crowds like a mad Roman emperor. In 1939, he formed an alliance with the one leader more unhinged than himself, Adolf Hitler, and embarked on a war that would threaten the very existence of the Eternal City. For over 2,000 years, Rome survived everything man and nature pitted against it, from raging fires to Goth invaders. But during World War II, the city faced devastation. September 1943. The Allies invade Italy and advance slowly towards Rome.
One of the problems as the Allied armies move up through Italy is that they encounter much tougher resistance than they imagined. And this becomes a major concern when the Allies are about to make their assault on Rome.
German forces occupy the city and surrounding area. To root them out, the Allies drop 60,000 tons of bombs on the outskirts. Their next target, the ancient city itself. It seems Rome and its 2,700 years of history are doomed to destruction. Just when all seems lost, this man brokers an extraordinary deal.
Archbishop Spellman of New York pays a visit to Lieutenant General Courtney Hodges, who commands the American First Army.
Archbishop Spellman, speaking for the Pope, persuades Allied leaders to leave historic Rome standing.
Fortunately, Cardinal Spellman of New York did a little intervention and convinced the American military, wait a second, maybe we can do a little hands-off and maybe we can avoid all this cataclysmic loss.
In June 1944, the U.S. Army liberate the city, and their arrival is directly responsible for a dish most of us think is a long-standing Italian recipe, spaghetti carbonara. During the German occupation, Romans lived on dried pasta. The Germans retreat, and here come the Americans handing out emergency food rations. And what did the Romans get? Powdered eggs and bacon. They took it home, mixed it up with pasta, and created a new Roman classic, carbonara. In the 1960s, another budding classic took center stage. Two of Hollywood's reigning stars, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, in town to film the most expensive movie made to date, Cleopatra. And where they stayed wasn't cheap either, the Grand Hotel, a palace where visitors have received royal treatment for over 100 years.
It's just this sense of history, the sense of the glass, the statues, the marble, just the service. It just floods from the walls, just comes out of the walls. It really set the standard for what a great hotel is.
This is the Ritz Ballroom, in memory of our founder. The ballroom is exactly the way it used to be 120 years ago. So all mirrors, the frescoes on the ceiling, the Murano glass chandeliers, as well as the marble floor, are original since the first opening.
Ritz coined the phrase, "The customer is always right." When building the hotel, he had a request from Italian King Umberto, who asked that the main stairway be wide enough for him to ride a horse up to his rooms. Ritz was happy to comply. Today, the best suite in the house is still on the first floor. No horses allowed.
Welcome to the Royal Suite. This is the largest apartment we have at the hotel, and it is definitely one of the most classic hotel suites in the city of Rome.
For over a year, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton called this suite home. It was here their romance began, and it soon became a global sensation. They were followed everywhere by a horde of photographers. The Romans nicknamed them the paparazzi. So Rome gave the world the paparazzi. Thanks, Rome. But that's the least of its contributions. Concrete, aqueducts, sewers, the civil engineering that makes it possible for 3 billion humans to live in cities today was all worked out in Rome 2,000 years ago. And even if the empire is no more, their food, like spaghetti carbonara, has conquered the planet. No other metropolis has left a greater mark on the world.